Have you ever felt like no matter how much you try to stay calm, something inside you keeps pulling the strings? You wake up, tell yourself today will be different, that you'll be patient, composed, and control, and by the end of the day, you've lost your temper, overreacted, or retreated into guilt again. You go to bed thinking, why can't I just get it together? That's the quiet war almost everyone is fighting. It's not on the surface, it's inside. And it has nothing to do with being weak. It has everything to do with the parts of you you've been taught to ignore. You see, we all like to think we know ourselves. We know our likes and dislikes, our goals, our values. But what if I told you that half of who you are, maybe more, is hidden beneath the surface, running your emotional life like an invisible operating system? That's what Carl Jung called the shadow. It's not some mystical monster. It's the sum of everything you've rejected, repressed, or pretended didn't exist inside you. Every bit of anger you swallowed because it wasn't nice. Every selfish thought you buried because it made you feel guilty. Every fear you dismissed because you were supposed to be brave. All of it went somewhere. And it didn't disappear. It went into the shadow. Think about how life conditions us from the very beginning. As kids, we learn quickly which emotions are acceptable. Smile and you're praised. Cry and you're told to toughen up. Get angry and you're scolded. So what do? We start editing ourselves. We show the world the good stuff and hide everything else behind a polite smile and a carefully curated personality. That's where the split begins, between who we are and who we think we should be. Now, here's the catch. The things we bury don't die. They wait. They live quietly under the surface, shaping our reactions, our moods, our relationships. The shadow isn't bad, it's just ignored. But the more you push it away, the stronger it becomes. That's why you sometimes explode in anger over something trivial or feel waves of anxiety that seem to come from nowhere. Those aren't random emotions. They're messages from the parts of you you've locked in the basement. Imagine it like this. Inside you is a house. The main floor is where you live, the clean, well-lit part you show to guests. But downstairs, there's a basement full of boxes labeled "Do Not Open." Each box holds something you didn't want to deal with: resentment, jealousy, grief, shame. Over the years, the pile grows. And every time you refuse to face what's in there, you add another box. Then one day the basement starts to flood. The boxes open themselves. Suddenly, emotions you thought you buried decades ago rush back and take over. You lash out, you break down, you sabotage your own success. Not because you're broken, but because the basement door can't stay locked forever. We live in a culture that teaches avoidance as survival. Distract yourself. Stay busy. Be positive. Hustle harder. But what if the constant busyness, the endless scrolling, the need to control everything are just ways to avoid hearing what your inner self is trying to say? Have you noticed how hard it is to sit alone in silence without reaching for your phone? That discomfort you feel, that restlessness, is your shadow knocking. It's saying, hey, look at me. I exist. The irony is, the more you run from it, the more power it has. That's why people who seem calm on the outside often struggle the most inside. They've mastered the art of appearing fine while living in quiet emotional chaos. They say things like, "I'm just tired," or "I don't know why I'm anxious," when the truth is, their unacknowledged emotions are steering the wheel. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's not philosophy, that's daily life. Every impulsive decision, every toxic relationship pattern, every self-sabotaging behavior, it all comes from the unseen part of you trying to be noticed. So here's the question I want you to ask yourself: what are you avoiding? What emotion, if you were completely honest, scares you to face? Is it anger? Guilt? The fear of not being enough? Maybe it's the envy you feel when someone succeeds, or the bitterness that surfaces when you think about the past. Whatever it is, that's where your power is hiding. The very feelings you've been taught to suppress are the keys to your emotional freedom. But to unlock that freedom, you have to stop treating discomfort as the enemy. Discomfort is information. It's the psyche's way of saying, there's something here you need to see. If you keep ignoring it, it will come back stronger through anxiety, burnout, conflict, depression. Every symptom is a signal. The question is whether you'll listen before it turns into a crisis. We live in a time when emotional control is sold like a product: meditation apps, motivational quotes, 5 steps to happiness. But the truth is, emotional mastery doesn't come from control. It comes from integration. It's not about shutting down what hurts. It's about listening to what hurts and asking why. It's not about being calm all the time. It's about understanding what your anger or sadness is trying to teach you. That's real strength, the kind that can't be shaken by circumstances. Facing your shadow doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means reclaiming the parts of yourself you left behind. The parts that once made you feel too emotional, too selfish, too different. It's realizing that wholeness isn't about light without darkness, it's about balance. You can't have peace without truth, and you can't have truth without courage. So as we begin this journey, remember this: you are not your mistakes, your emotions, or your fears. You are the one who can face them. That's what this work is really about, taking back the power you've unknowingly given to the parts of you you refuse to see. The shadow isn't there to destroy you. It's there to make you whole. The question is, are you ready to stop fighting yourself and start understanding yourself? Because that's where real change begins, not in the light, but in the courage to walk through the dark and see what's really been waiting there all along. Let's rewind the tape to where all of this started. Not last year, not when your boss pushed your buttons, not even when your last relationship imploded. Go back to childhood. You learned fast which emotions earned a smile and which brought a frown. Be nice. Say thank you. Stop crying. Don't talk back. Maybe no one ever said, don't feel, but the message landed anyway. Certain feelings are welcome at the table, others get sent to their room without dinner. That's the first draft of the shadow. It isn't a villain descending from the ceiling, it's a file cabinet we build, one label at a time: anger, envy, fear, needs, desire. What doesn't fit the family system, the classroom, the church group, the team, gets filed away, out of sight, out of mind, but never out of you. Think about the rules you absorbed without realizing it. Good kids don't get angry. Strong boys don't cry. Nice girls don't say no. Don't be selfish. Don't be needy. Don't rock the boat. That conditioning shapes a performance. You learn to present the version of yourself that keeps the peace. And because you're smart, you get good at it. You laugh when you're hurt. You make a joke when you want to scream. You apologize when you're the one who was disrespected. That's not you being fake, that's you being adaptive. But adaptation always has a cost. Every time you swallow a real feeling to preserve the image of a good person, you're splitting from a living truth inside you, and the split is where the shadow takes root. Here's the key distinction most people miss: repression is not the same as integration. Repression is shoving the feeling into the basement and deadbolting the door. Integration is inviting that feeling upstairs and asking what it wants you to know. Repression buys you short-term harmony and long-term chaos. Integration may create short-term discomfort, but it delivers long-term freedom. The shadow is born every time we choose appearances over awareness, compliance over conscience, a polished story over a messy truth. You've seen this play out. The kid who's told to be the easy one grows into an adult who can't say no and ends up resentful at work and exhausted at home. The teenager who hears "suck it up" learns to numb out and later wonders why intimacy feels dangerous. The star student praised for being so mature becomes a parent who can handle everyone's crisis except their own. Culture claps for the performance. Meanwhile, the shadow keeps the receipts. Picture it like a house with 2 levels. Upstairs is the living room where guests sit, tidy, bright, curated. Downstairs is the storage room where you stuff anything that doesn't match the decor. A harsh memory. A surge of jealousy. A loud, rightful anger. A need for rest. A longing for recognition. None of these are bad. But if they threaten the image you're trying to maintain, downstairs they go. You promise yourself you'll deal with them later. Later never comes. The room fills. Pressure builds. One day a pipe bursts. That's your out-of-character explosion, your quiet depression, your sudden panic that seems to come from nowhere. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from downstairs. And it isn't just family rules, society has a masterclass in shadow making. Hustle culture says your worth is your productivity, so you repress rest and call it laziness. Politeness culture says keep it pleasant, so you repress boundaries and call it kindness. Social media says be positive, so you repress grief and call it mindset. We've turned emotional bypass into a lifestyle brand. But what you bury alive does not stay buried. It grows teeth. Here's a real-life snapshot. You're at work, and a colleague gets recognized for a project. Instantly, you feel a tightness in your chest. Envy. You slap a smile on your face and say, "Amazing job." You push the envy down because good teammates aren't jealous. But envy is just information, a sign you have a desire that's underfed, ownership, visibility, impact. Repress it and it turns sour, leading to passive-aggressive comments, procrastination, or checking out. Integrate it and it becomes fuel. What exactly did I want there? Where can I ask for it? What skill do I need to build? Same emotion, different outcome. The difference is whether you make space for truth. Or take anger. Maybe you grew up watching anger used as a weapon, so you vowed never to be like that. Noble intention. But if your vow turns into a ban, your anger will leak sideways, sarcasm, stonewalling, people-pleasing followed by an over-the-top blow-up. Healthy anger protects what matters, your values, your time, your dignity. Shadowborn anger punishes because it's been caged too long. Again, repression creates the very behavior you tried to avoid. Even tenderness gets locked away. Maybe you were mocked for being sensitive, so you swapped tenderness for toughness. Decades later, you're successful and respected, but your relationships feel transactional. You can't receive care without thinking it puts you in someone's debt. That's not a personality flaw, that's a protective adaptation, one that once kept you safe, now keeping you stuck. The shadow hoards that tenderness like contraband. Integration brings it back to the table as strength. So how does the shadow keep growing? Through repeated micro-choices: bite your tongue, don't cry, be agreeable, be useful, avoid conflict. Each choice on its own seems minor. Over years, it becomes identity. I'm easygoing. I don't need much. I'm just not emotional. No, those are strategies, not truths. They helped you survive environments that couldn't hold your full range. But you're not in that house anymore. You get to upgrade the rules. Ask yourself, which feelings did your family label as too much? Which needs did you learn to meet by overperforming? What parts of you earned applause, and what parts were quietly punished? Don't rush past these questions. They map the origin of your shadow. And when you can name the origin, you stop confusing old safety strategies with your current self. Here's the empowering turn: the very emotions you filed away are not liabilities. They're leadership material. Anger becomes a boundary. Envy becomes a compass. Fear becomes a guide to preparation. Sadness becomes connection. Desire becomes direction. Integration doesn't mean indulging every impulse, it means decoding every signal. When you listen, the shadow loses its need to shout. If you want a simple rule for the road, use this: what you refuse to feel, you're forced to act out. What you're willing to feel, you're free to choose. That's the birthplace of emotional agency. In the next step, we'll look at the costume you learned to wear to keep all of this hidden, the persona. It's the social armor that helped you get the job, keep the peace, and look together, while quietly feeding the shadow behind the scenes. You don't have to burn the armor. But you do need to stop mistaking it for your skin. Let's talk about the mask. The one you've been polishing your whole life. You might not even realize you're wearing it because it's done such a good job protecting you. It's the smile you put on when you're dying inside, the "I'm fine" you tell your friends when you're anything but fine. Jung called this mask the persona, the social face we build to be accepted, respected, and loved. And in our modern world, the persona isn't just a mask, it's a full costume, complete with lighting, filters, and performance cues. The problem isn't that you have one, it's that somewhere along the way, you started believing it was you. From childhood, we learn the rules of belonging. Fit in. Be likable. Say what people want to hear. Don't make waves. That becomes the architecture of the persona. We all build it because it keeps us safe. At work, it's the professional. In relationships, it's the easygoing partner. Online, it's the curated self. You might even have different masks for different rooms of your life. But each one comes with a price tag. The longer you wear it, the further you drift from your real self. And soon, you start mistaking the applause for authenticity. You think, they love me, but deep down you know they love the role, not the actor. We live in a culture obsessed with image. Fake it till you make it. Brand yourself. Good vibes only. Every slogan trains us to polish the mask instead of strengthen the self. We've become experts at managing perception, our own little PR departments of the soul. But here's the truth, the more energy you spend holding up the mask, the less energy you have left to live your actual life. You can't breathe deeply while you're pretending to be someone else. Ever notice how exhausting it is to always be on? The small talk at work when you'd rather be silent. The polite smile during family gatherings where no one really listens. The social media posts where you frame your happiness just right while your heart's in pieces. That exhaustion isn't normal, it's the cost of constant self-editing. And the shadow loves this setup because while you're busy curating your persona, the disowned parts of you grow stronger in the dark. Let's bring it down to something real. Imagine you're that colleague who's always cheerful. Everyone calls you the positive one. You're the emotional glue of the team. But lately, you cry in your car before work and don't even know why. You've built your identity around being the light, so you can't admit you feel darkness. Or maybe you're the dependable one, the rock, the problem solver, the one everyone leans on. But the truth is, you're tired of being strong all the time. You just don't know how to put the armor down. These personas start as survival strategies. Over time, they become cages. The trap is that society rewards the mask. You get promoted for being endlessly agreeable, liked for being easy, admired for your composure. The persona becomes currency. And the more valuable it seems, the harder it is to take off. But deep down, you know something's off. You feel disconnected, like you're living a double life, one outward, one hidden. That's not paranoia. That's your authentic self knocking, saying, "Hey, remember me?" What's worse is when the mask starts cracking. You lose your temper in a meeting. You break down in front of someone you barely know. You cancel plans because you can't pretend one more time. Those moments of collapse aren't failure, they're invitations. The shadow is trying to balance the equation. Everything you repress to keep the mask spotless leaks out eventually through anxiety, fatigue, addiction, or burnout. The mask may win you approval, but it will never give you peace. Think about how social media amplifies this. We scroll through highlight reels and think, why can't I be that calm, that successful, that happy? But here's the secret, everyone's running their own PR campaign. The persona is the world's favorite illusion. And when you compare your real life to someone else's performance, you're comparing your truth to their fiction. That's a losing game. Jung said the persona is a necessary interface with society, but also a dangerous one if we forget that it's not the self. It's like armor, useful in battle, deadly if you never take it off. The longer you wear it, the heavier it becomes. You start believing your own press. You tell yourself, I'm the calm one, I'm the strong one, I'm the funny one. But what if one day you're not? What if you're sad, angry, lost, or confused? The persona doesn't know what to do with that. It panics. It says, don't let anyone see. And that's when the shadow takes the wheel. So how do you begin to free yourself from the mask? Not by smashing it with a hammer, but by getting curious. Notice when you're performing. Notice when your smile feels tight or your words feel rehearsed. Ask yourself, what am I protecting right now? What am I afraid they'll see? Behind every mask is a fear, the fear of rejection, of not being enough, of being too much. Facing that fear is how the mask begins to loosen. Here's a small but powerful exercise. The next time you catch yourself saying I should, pause. Replace it with I want or I don't want. Feel the difference. The persona lives on shoulds. The real self lives on truth. Every time you choose honesty over performance, you reclaim a piece of your power. Imagine the relief of being seen for who you really are, not for who you pretend to be. Imagine walking into a room without needing to adjust your tone, your posture, your entire being to fit the vibe. That's freedom. That's authenticity. And it's only possible when you start dismantling the mask you've mistaken for identity. Remember this, the shadow feeds on pretense. The more you perform, the stronger it grows. The more real you become, the weaker it gets. You can still have a persona, it's a tool. But use it consciously, not as camouflage. The goal isn't to live without masks, it's to never forget what's underneath. Because that's where your humanity lives. That's where your real power is. In the next part, we'll go even deeper. We'll step into the confrontation, the moment when you finally meet your shadow face to face. It's not comfortable, but it's the most honest conversation you'll ever have with yourself. And it's the one that changes everything. At some point in this journey, the theories stop being comfortable ideas and start becoming real. This is the part where things get messy. This is the confrontation. It's the moment when you stop analyzing your emotions like a scientist and start actually feeling them like a human being. It's the moment you stop asking, why am I like this, and start saying, okay, I see it now. I don't like it, but it's mine. That's the doorway to real transformation, and make no mistake, it's not for the faint of heart. Confronting the shadow is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming honest. And honesty hurts. Because you're going to see sides of yourself you've spent decades trying to deny, the envy that creeps in when someone else succeeds, the resentment you feel toward people you're supposed to love, the quiet arrogance that hides under your humility, the craving for control you disguise as helping. When those parts surface, your first instinct will be to shove them back down. You'll say, that's not me. But it is. It's the part you've been editing out of your story. The shadow isn't a stranger. It's you, just the you didn't want anyone to meet. Here's the paradox. The moment you look at your darkness without judgment is the moment it begins to lose power. The shadow thrives on denial. It feeds on shame. The more you try to suppress it, the more it sabotages you from the dark. But when you face it head on, when you say, yes, I can be jealous. Yes, I can be angry. Yes, I can be selfish, something incredible happens. Those emotions start transforming from poison into information. You realize jealousy might be showing you what you truly desire. Anger might be signaling a boundary that's been crossed. Selfishness might be reminding you that self-care isn't a crime. You start decoding your emotions instead of running from them. The process usually unfolds in stages. The first is denial. You don't want to believe you could possibly carry these traits. You tell yourself stories to stay comfortable. I'm not controlling, I'm just organized. I'm not jealous, I'm just protective. I'm not angry, I'm just passionate. It's okay, denial is the mind's way of buying time. The next stage is resistance. This is where the guilt kicks in. You start judging yourself for even having these thoughts or feelings. You say things like, what's wrong with me? That guilt is the ego trying to hold onto its old identity, the nice, clean, good version of you. Then comes acceptance. You stop arguing with reality. You breathe and say, all right, it's there. And finally, integration, the point where you stop fighting your emotions and start listening to them. That's when the inner war quiets down, because every part of you is finally allowed a seat at the table. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you realize you have a deep streak of envy. It makes you cringe, so you cover it up with fake compliments or self-deprecating jokes. But when you confront it directly, you might discover it's not about wanting what others have, it's about ignoring your own potential. That envy is pointing you towards something you're capable of but too afraid to pursue. Or take anger. You tell yourself you're above it, that you're calm, rational, spiritually mature. Yet you keep attracting people who disrespect your boundaries. That's not coincidence, it's a reflection of the anger you refuse to own. When you finally face it, you realize that your anger isn't destructive. It's protective. It's saying, I matter too. The problem was never the emotion itself, it was your refusal to listen. This is why Jung said that individuation, becoming whole, requires a moral effort. It's not intellectual, it's emotional labor. You have to stand in front of your own reflection and say, I see you. I see what you're capable of, the light and the dark. And then you have to stay there long enough not to flinch. Because the moment you look away, the shadow starts working behind your back again. Facing it is like shining a flashlight into the basement. The first time you go down, it's terrifying. But as your eyes adjust, you realize most of what's down there isn't evil. It's just forgotten. One of the biggest traps during this process is trying to skip straight to healing. People say, I just want to be done with this. I just want peace. But peace without truth is just a prettier version of denial. You can't bypass the confrontation. You can't jump to the light without walking through the dark. It's like cleaning a wound, you have to face the sting to prevent infection. Emotional healing works the same way. Another trap is self-pity, confusing self-awareness with self-attack. Facing your shadow doesn't mean beating yourself up. It means listening with brutal honesty and radical compassion at the same time. You are not doing this work to shame yourself. You are doing it to liberate yourself from shame. There's a difference between guilt and responsibility. Guilt says, I'm a bad person. Responsibility says, I did something that hurt me or others, and now I can change it. Responsibility is empowerment. During the confrontation, you will also notice that the shadow has layers. You peel one back and another appears. That's normal. Jung said the process of integrating the shadow accompanies us throughout life. There's no done. Each phase of growth brings a new mirror, a new reflection of who we are. The goal isn't to conquer the shadow but to stay in dialogue with it. To keep asking, what part of me needs to be seen right now? And here's the reward for all that discomfort, clarity. Emotional clarity. You stop being hijacked by unconscious reactions. You stop projecting your own wounds onto others. You begin to see people and situations for what they are, not through the filter of your unhealed pain. That clarity brings strength, not the brittle kind that breaks under pressure, but the grounded kind that holds steady through storms. So when you face your shadow, remember this, it's not an enemy trying to destroy you, it's an unhealed part trying to rejoin you. The goal isn't perfection. It's wholeness. The more you integrate, the less life feels like a battlefield. The chaos outside loses its grip because the chaos inside finally has a voice. You don't need to control everything anymore. You just need to see yourself clearly, all of yourself. In the next section, we'll go deeper into what happens after this confrontation, when deeper forces, the archetypes within you, start to rise. They're not just symbols or myths. They're living patterns that shape how you evolve. And once you understand them, you'll realize the shadow isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of becoming something far more complete. Once you begin facing your shadow, something deeper starts to awaken inside you. You start noticing that your emotions, dreams, and even your conflicts follow patterns, ancient patterns that feel both personal and universal. It's as if something larger than your individual story is moving through you. Jung called these patterns archetypes, timeless blueprints of human experience that live in the collective unconscious. They're not abstract theories. They're the psychological DNA that shapes how you love, fight, protect, and create. Once you begin this inner work, those forces rise to the surface, and they can either guide you or trap you, depending on how conscious you are. Let's start with the simplest ones: the inner child, the inner rebel, the wise self, and the trickster. Each one plays a role in your transformation, and each one can either serve you or sabotage you. The inner child is that vulnerable, creative part of you that still longs for love, safety, and wonder. When you ignore it, it shows up through neediness, emotional reactivity, or fear of abandonment. But when you nurture it, it becomes the source of creativity, play, and compassion. You stop demanding unconditional love from the world and start giving it to yourself. You realize that most of your adult pain is your inner child still trying to get someone else to heal what only you can. Then comes the inner rebel, the part that refuses to conform, that challenges authority, that says, "I won't live by your rules anymore." The rebel is essential during shadow work because it gives you the courage to break free from old conditioning. But if you don't keep it conscious, it can become self-destructive, rebelling just to feel alive, burning bridges to prove independence. The healthy rebel tears down false walls, the wounded rebel destroys everything, even what's good. So the question becomes, are you rebelling to protect your truth or to escape your responsibility? That's how you keep this archetype from hijacking your growth. Next is the wise self, sometimes appearing as an inner voice, sometimes as a mentor figure in your dreams. It's the part of you that already knows what's right for your soul, even when your ego resists. You felt it, that quiet intuition that says, "Stop. Breathe. Don't react yet." Or the whisper that says, "It's time to let go." When you start integrating your shadow, the wise self becomes louder because your mind is less cluttered with denial. It's not mystical, it's clarity. You begin to recognize the difference between the noise of fear and the signal of truth. And then, there's the trickster. Oh, the trickster, that chaotic, mischievous force inside every one of us. It's the part that laughs when life gets too serious, that reminds you how fragile your control really is. It's also the one that tests you the hardest. You think you've mastered your shadow? The trickster will show up to prove otherwise. You'll feel enlightened and then find yourself judging others for not being as aware. That's the ego in disguise, dressed up as wisdom. The trickster teaches humility. It keeps you honest by exposing spiritual pride. If you can laugh at yourself instead of defending your image, the trickster becomes an ally. It teaches you to take your growth seriously, but never yourself too seriously. These archetypes aren't imaginary characters. They're functions of your psyche. They show up in your relationships, in your work, even in your habits. The inner child speaks when you're hurt. The rebel acts out when you feel trapped. The wise self whispers during stillness. The trickster messes with you when you get rigid. Learning to recognize who's speaking inside you at any given moment is one of the most powerful forms of self-awareness you can develop. Because when you don't, these forces run your life unconsciously, like inner actors performing without a director. You might notice these patterns in your dreams. Maybe you dream of a small, frightened child lost in a house. That's your inner child calling for attention. Or maybe a wild animal keeps chasing you. That's your shadow demanding to be faced. Maybe a wise old man appears and hands you a key. That's your wise self showing the way forward. Dreams are the psyche's language. Once you start paying attention, you'll realize it's been talking to you all along. Here's what's fascinating. When you start integrating these archetypes, they don't just change your emotions, they change your behavior in the real world. You stop choosing partners to fix your inner wounds because you start tending to them yourself. You stop trying to control people because you learn to manage your own fear. You stop living in extremes because you understand both sides of yourself, the light and the dark, the rebel and the sage. That's what Jung meant when he said that individuation is about becoming whole, not perfect. It's not about killing parts of you. It's about putting them in dialogue. But this process is not linear. Sometimes, after a breakthrough, you'll backslide. You'll think, "I've got this," and the next day you'll lose your temper or spiral into old patterns. That's the trickster again, reminding you that growth is a spiral, not a straight line. Every time you loop back, you return with more awareness. Each cycle takes you deeper. The goal is not to avoid the chaos, but to move through it consciously. The deeper truth here is that these archetypes are not just psychological, they're spiritual. They connect you to the story of humanity itself. The warrior who learns compassion. The lover who learns boundaries. The seeker who faces their own darkness to find light. You are not inventing this journey, you are joining it. Every myth, every sacred story, every hero's path is just another version of what you're living through right now. And when you realize that, you stop feeling broken. You understand you're part of something timeless, a universal process of awakening. So here's the challenge: don't just analyze your archetypes, embody them. When you need courage, summon your inner warrior. When you need softness, let your inner caregiver breathe. When you fall into chaos, call on the wise self to steer the wheel. And when life knocks you down, let the trickster remind you not to take defeat too seriously. Sometimes failure is the setup for your next revelation. This is the inner revolution Jung was pointing to, not the war of good versus evil, but the integration of opposites. When you stop trying to erase parts of yourself and start giving each one its rightful place, you become grounded, whole, and alive. And that's when emotional strength stops being a performance and starts being your nature. In the next section, we'll bring all of this together, how the integration of the shadow and these archetypes turns emotional chaos into clarity. You'll see why those who embrace this journey don't become perfect saints, they become emotionally unshakable human beings, rooted in truth and free from the tyranny of pretending. After all this digging, facing, and integrating, you might be wondering, what's the point of all this hard work? Why go through the pain of confronting the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime avoiding? The answer is simple but powerful, because this is how you become emotionally unshakable. Not cold. Not detached. But grounded, solid in who you are, no matter what's happening around you. When you integrate your shadow, you stop being at war with yourself. And when the inner war ends, the outer world stops shaking you so easily. Emotional strength isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about understanding them so deeply that they can't control you anymore. Imagine someone cutting you off in traffic. Before shadow work, you explode or stew about it all day. After integration, you still feel that flash of irritation, but instead of reacting automatically, you pause. You see it for what it is, a boundary of personal space that got crossed, not an existential insult. You breathe, let it move through you, and it's gone. That's not weakness. That's mastery. You're not numb, you're aware. Let's be real. Life won't stop testing you. You'll still lose people. You'll still face rejection, pressure, uncertainty. The difference is that those things no longer define you. When you've faced your own shadow, external chaos doesn't throw you off balance because you've already met chaos within. You recognize it. You know how to breathe through it. That's what people feel when they meet someone truly grounded, not someone who has no emotions, but someone whose emotions have become integrated allies instead of unpredictable enemies. This is also where emotional intelligence stops being a buzzword and becomes a lived reality. When you're aware of your own shadow, you stop projecting it onto others. You stop blaming your partner for feelings that belong to you. You stop assuming your boss is cruel when maybe you're just terrified of authority. You start owning your part, not out of guilt, but out of strength. That self-awareness ripples outward. Your relationships get cleaner. Conversations become real. Conflict becomes an opportunity for growth instead of a battlefield. You begin to notice something else too. Authenticity gets easier. You no longer need to perform. You can admit when you're wrong without feeling worthless. You can say no without guilt. You can show vulnerability without collapsing. Why? Because you've accepted all those parts of yourself that used to make you feel ashamed. You've learned that you don't have to be perfect to be whole. You just have to be honest. And the beauty of honesty is that it creates peace. You stop wasting energy pretending to be something you're not. You stop editing your emotions to make other people comfortable. You stop living under the exhausting weight of the persona. When you can stand in your truth, not the polished version, not the Instagram version, but the real one, you become untouchable in the best possible way. People can criticize you, misunderstand you, even reject you, and you will still know who you are. That's freedom. But make no mistake, this isn't a one-time victory. Integration is a lifelong practice. The shadow doesn't disappear. It evolves. It tests you in new ways. You might think you've mastered jealousy, and then a new situation hits you right in that old wound. You might think you've learned patience until someone pushes your last button. The goal isn't to never fall, it's to fall consciously. To notice, learn, and rise quicker each time. You stop seeing setbacks as proof you're failing and start seeing them as proof you're growing. So how do you maintain this awareness in everyday life? Start small. Build daily rituals of self-connection. Reflective writing is one of the most powerful tools. Take 5 minutes at the end of your day and ask, what triggered me today? What emotion did I avoid? What lesson is hiding underneath? Don't try to fix it right away, just notice. The act of noticing alone brings light to the unconscious. Another tool is mindfulness, not as a trendy word, but as a way of living. Pause before reacting. Feel your body. Feel your breath. Notice what's real versus what's imagined. Those few seconds of awareness can change the entire trajectory of your day. Relationships are also mirrors. Use them consciously. When someone annoys you, ask, what does this reflect in me? When you feel a surge of admiration, ask, what part of me wants to be expressed more? Every emotion, positive or negative, is a doorway to deeper self-understanding. And when you treat life that way, everything becomes part of your growth. Boundaries are another crucial part of staying balanced. You can't integrate your shadow if you're constantly betraying yourself to please others. Every time you say yes when you mean no, your shadow collects the bill. Emotional freedom requires honest limits, saying no without guilt, resting without justification, walking away without explanation. The more you respect your boundaries, the less your shadow needs to scream for attention. And here's the ultimate truth, integration doesn't make you superhuman, it makes you deeply human. You'll still feel pain, loss, disappointment. But you'll face them differently. You'll know that even in heartbreak, there's wisdom unfolding. You'll know that anger can be sacred if it defends your truth. You'll know that sadness isn't weakness, it's proof you still care. Every emotion becomes part of your wholeness. Nothing needs to be exiled anymore. When you reach that point, peace stops being a goal and becomes a byproduct. It's not the peace of everything going right. It's the peace of knowing you can handle it when things go wrong. It's the quiet confidence of someone who has walked through their own darkness and made it out alive, wiser, lighter, and free. So here's where we end, but also where your real journey begins. The shadow isn't something you conquer once and forget. It's a lifelong relationship with the truth. The more honest you are with yourself, the freer you become. The more you face what's uncomfortable, the stronger you get. Emotional unshakability isn't about control, it's about acceptance. It's about standing in the storm and saying, I trust myself. Say it to yourself right now, I am ready to face my shadow. Say it again until it feels real. That sentence marks the beginning of everything that matters. Because from that moment on, life stops being something that happens to you, it becomes something you live fully, consciously, courageously. That's what it means to be unshakable. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below, I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.